All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to the Mythgard Academy. This is session 10 of our class on Morte Arthur. And first, let me, Steve, I see Steve Malisi was just asking about the videos. There has been a delay in the posting of the last couple weeks of Malory videos, which is absolutely and 100% my fault. I've been behind on a bunch of things with some of the traveling I've been doing lately, and it's absolutely my fault, but it has been rectified. They should be up very soon. I don't know exactly when, but very soon. The bottleneck in the process, which was me, has finally been cleared. So that's coming. Okay. Hey everybody, welcome back. So I wanted to, before we started tonight, I wanted to make sure to announce some stuff because it's going to be awesome. We are almost at our annual fundraising campaign. This coming Saturday, of course, is Hobbit Day, Bilbo and Frodo's birthday. And so we're going to celebrate that day. And as has been the case for the last 5 years, we're going to be starting our fall fundraising campaign for Signum University and the Mythgard Institute on Saturday as well. So that's going to be really exciting. It's going to run, the campaign is going to run from this Saturday, from Hobbit Day this Saturday through October 13th, Saturday, October 13th. That's going to be the date of our campaign ending webathon, which you probably remember from previous years. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And then this year we're going to have a special, really fun kickoff event. We're doing a special Hobbit Day reading event on Saturday. So this is going to be this coming Saturday, the 22nd at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And I'll be broadcasting both here and GoToWebinar. You can find the link on our annual fund page, signumuniversity.org/fund. And you can find all the link for all of our events and the list of our sort of our calendar there. Anyway, so you can log in here, or you can join us on Twitch, twitch.tv/signumu. I'll be broadcasting there as well. So what we're going to do this weekend for our Hobbit Day event is going to be a lot of fun. We're going to do readings. So we have several people who have made some readings. I'm going to be doing a reading from the Fall of Gondolin, and we're going to be doing readings and sort of light discussion afterwards. Not sort of deeply academic discussion, but more of the sort of appreciation kind. It's really great just to kind of sit back and talk on a slightly more personal level about, why these stories have meant so much to us. It's a really wonderful time. Hobbit Day is a really wonderful time to kind of, sort of step back a second and just remember kind of why we all do this and why we've all been so enthusiastic about this for a long time. So anyway, that's what we're going to be. That's what we're going to be working on there for a while. So that's going to be Saturday, 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock Eastern time on Saturday the 22nd is our kickoff event. And then one of the other highlights of the campaign every year is my Lord of the Rings online marathon. For those of you who are into that, I'm going to be exploring Gondor in the game world, which I have visited a couple times, but never really fully explored myself, at least not in human form. So I'm going to be doing that for a long time on the 29th, about 12 hours or so, on the 29th of September. And then, as I say, the webathon, and we're going to be doing some special stuff and giveaways and door prizes and things like that during Malory class and stuff soon. So I'll explain the details of that next week, but that's all going to be stuff that's going to be happening. So I just wanted to let you know that was coming up. Also, a reminder, we are almost to Middlemoot. Middlemoot in Kansas City, which is on October 6th, Saturday, October 6th. So this coming Saturday is Hobbit Day reading event. The Saturday after that is the Lotro Marathon. The Saturday after that, we're going to be in Kansas City. So that's going to be great fun. So we're having a great crowd in Kansas City for Middlemoot. I hope you'll be able to join us. If you're anywhere nearby, please do come join us. Check out the registration form again, signumuniversity.org. Just scroll down a little bit and you'll see the event link for Middlemoot. We, of course, have other moots also going on. We've got LA Moot on October 27th. We've got, I almost said Tex Moot, but that's not next. We've got Magnolia Moot in Charlotte, North Carolina. on November 10th, and then we've got Texmoot down in Waco, Texas, on January 19th. So lots of things coming up and happening here. So should be lots of fun stuff. So okay. So let's go back to the text. Today, my goal today is to do all the rest of the Emperor Lucius stuff. I would, I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit keen to get this section behind us. This has always been my least favorite part of Le Morte d'Arthur. And the primary reason why, one, it's just awkward because, like, you've gotten used to Malory's language, and now all of a sudden it's just weirder, and it's this kind of bizarre hybrid of like 14th century Middle English and 15th century Middle English, and it's kind of, you know, neither fish nor fowl, and it's just a little bit strange and jarring, I find anyway. But in addition, the bigger thing, and this is something that's always kind of bugged me a little bit in the background, I have to admit, but which I've been thinking about a little bit more as, you know, I've been going through and reading through this time in preparation. And I think I've been able to put my finger a little bit more precisely on what has always bothered me about this section. And it's that Malory is departing from his own particular idiom, as I'm suggesting in my title here. The alliterative Morte Arthur is a fun poem. You know, I don't dislike the alliterative Morte Arthur at all, but it's different. It's very different from the rest of Malory. And Malory, his very close adaptation of the alliterative Morte Arthur leads him into no end of awkwardness, really, I think. It doesn't really work. This whole section doesn't fit in that so many of the things that he's doing, some of the things that he's bringing in, the whole like tone and spirit and characterization and everything is just, it doesn't fit with Malory's world. This is not the Arthur that he's been building up, that he's been depicting. This is not the Lancelot, not even the Gawain that he's been depicting. He's not depicted Lancelot much yet, but anyway, it's just, I don't know. I feel like you can see what he's trying to do, what Malory's trying to do, and the sort of the ways in which he's trying to bring this story within his world, his Arthurian world. But he's not thorough enough, I think, in doing that, and it ends up, I find, kind of awkward. We looked, for example, last week at the fun instance, right, when he replaces riotous with royalist, right? Arthur's going to bring his riotous knights down through and rampage through Italy on his way to sack Rome. And Malory changes that to, I'm going to bring my royalist knights down. Except when push comes to shove, they're still riotous. They're not actually very royal when they came down. But anyway, we'll get there. I hope you'll see what I mean. But like I say, I wanted to get through, but that's not to say that there aren't some fun sections of this. Some of the fun, of course, is there in the original, and which fun Malory is just importing. Other things are just kind of cutenesses of Malory's adaptation. But we'll get there. So we're going to see how much of it we can get through here tonight. All right. So this is the passage that I came to and then stopped last time, because this one is complicated, and I'm not going to try to gloss it word by word. The goal is just to get the overall picture, right? So the question to ask yourself here, is, or rather, I guess the question that this passage is designed to answer is, what's at stake? Who's the enemy here? What is Arthur lined up against, you see, when he goes down to Rome? Because, to say he is fighting the Roman Empire, well, that could mean so many things, right? Are we thinking of the Roman Empire as that, like, destined to be, thinking it from like an Aeneas point of view, right? As like that destined future empire that's supposed to be, chosen of the god and fortune's favorites. Are we thinking of that? Are we thinking of Rome as this like great traditional strength and, the powerhouse and backbone of Europe? How are we supposed to be thinking of this, right? Who's the enemy here exactly? And that I think is what this is supposed to answer. But actually, before I go, one quick question. Marilyn was asking a quick language question before we start. Great question, Marilyn. She wants to know about the phrase "on live." Great question. What is it? It does. So when he says like he's the greatest knight on live, it means, yes, the greatest knight alive, the greatest knight in the world, essentially. On live is a pretty, who is currently alive. Of all living knights, he is the greatest, is what it means when you say he's the greatest knight on live. So yeah. Karita, I know, try to focus here on the names of the on the names of the all the names and lists of places and stuff here. Karita, one fun thing, it's much more interesting if you try to pronounce all of these names in Middle English, right? Then you get to say names like Pampoil and things like that. So I mean, like, who doesn't enjoy that? Anyway, okay. Fan the Emperor sent forth his messengers of wise old Cnichtes unto a country called Ambraj and Araj, and unto Alisander, to Inda, and to Erminy, that the river of Euphrates runneth by, and to Asi, Aufric, and Europe the large, and to Ertine, and Elami, and to the Out Isles, to Araby, to Egypt, to Damascus, to Damayak, and to noble duches and earls, and also the king of Cappadoce, and the king of Tars, and of Turkey, and of Pounce, and Pampoil, and of outer Praetor Johannesland, also the Sudan of Surrey, and from Nero unto Nazareth, and from Garaese unto Galilee, there come Saracens, and become subjects unto Rome. So they come gleading in guiles. And also there come the king of Cyprus, and the Greeks that were gathered, and goodly arrayed, and the king of Macedoni, and of Calaba, and of Catalonda, both kinges and duches, and the king of Portingala, with many thousand Spaniards. Sorry. Thus all these kinges and duches and admirales nobles assembled with 16 kinges at once, and so they come unto Rome with great multitude of people. When the emperor understood their coming, he made ready all his noble Romines and all men of war betwixt him and Flanders. Also he had gotten with him 50 giantess that were engendered with fiendes, and although he let ordain for to await on his person and for to break the battail of the front of Arthur's Cnichtes, but they were so much of their bodies that horses might not bear them. And thus the emperor, with all his horrible people, drew to pass Alamine to destroy Arthur's Londes, that he was through war of his noble Cnichtes. Okay. Lots of kings here. Lots of kings. James says he's known too many Spaniards. They're all here, right, James? All of those Spaniards are here. Yeah. Okay. What's the answer to the question? So back up for a second. Ignore all the names. Every single one of them. Don't think of a single one of the name. What's the message here? Because there are several messages here, right? Several answers to the question, who's the enemy? Who is fighting against King Arthur here? One answer is everybody. Everybody. I mean, this is not just everybody geographically. This is like everybody historically too. Right? Like you'll notice the Macedonians are fighting as well. I mean, it's like they've thrown into this list not only all the countries that they've heard of, but like all the countries they've ever heard stories about, right? So like you've heard stories of Alexander the Great and the Macedonians, right? Well, yeah, they came too, right? Everybody, they're all there, right? Yeah, so this is like King Arthur contra mundum, right? The entire world. All of the known world, like seriously, outside of the lands that King Arthur controls, everybody in the world is arrayed against him, right? So that's a big deal. Stephen says China's sitting it out. No, they're not, right? Okay, maybe not the Chinese, but the Mongols are there. That's what Praetor Johannes is. Praetor Johannes land, that's Mongolia. Okay, that's where Prester John went. I'm not even going to get into Prester John, but yes, that's a Prester John reference. Who was it that recognized it? Somebody. Yes, Julie, Dick, exactly. Yes. So it's trust me, that means Mongolia, right? So the Mongols are there, right? Jordan says it's Rome resurgent. No, this is like Rome. In Rome's wildest dreams, right? Rome didn't conquer half this terrain, right? At its heyday. So, this is kind of amazing. Yeah, you're right, Jonna. If they had heard of the Native Americans at this point, the Native Americans would have been there too. Yeah, absolutely. Yep. No, and the Aztecs and everybody. I mean, absolutely everybody would have been. I mean, it's the entire known world. Notice India. We've got India here, right? As well as Asia, which means presumably Asia Minor, Africa. I mean, everybody's there, right? So that's one message: is that this passage is designed to just kind of overwhelm you. You don't have to know all the references. I mean, that is to say, I don't think that Malory's thought was that everybody is going to even know all of these names. It's not. I don't think it's what is important here. What's important here is this simple, like the weight of the list, right? As it just rolls over you, like, wow, like all of these kings and dukes and earls from all of these lands are all arrayed against Arthur. That's amazing, right? And giants. Yes, exactly. And who is asking about the giants? Let's see. Because let's see. I think you were. Somebody was asking. Who was asking about the giants? Was asking if you were. Yes, there, Karita. Yes, giants engendered by fiends. Yes, so giants who are the children of demons. You are understanding that correctly. That's why they're giants. Right, because they're the descendants of fiends. Like, not all descendants of fiends, like not all children of fiends end up like Merlin, Yeah, giants, but no dwarfs, Brian. Exactly. There are probably dwarfs around, but they don't brag about those. It would give entirely the wrong impression to be like, and like there were a bunch of dwarfs arrayed against them. I know, like, it's different, right? Stephen says, is Malory thinking of the Nephilim? Yeah, most likely. I think so. I am pretty sure that interpretation... So Stephen, you're going to make me explain this now. In the beginning of Genesis chapter 6, right before the flood is described, there's this extremely cryptic passage that nobody really knows exactly what it means, that there were giants in the land in those days, that the children of God looked on the sons of God looked on the daughters of men and thought that they were fair and lay by them, and there were giants in the land in those days. One interpretation of that passage is that this is like angelic spirits, like demons, having sex with mortal women and producing giants, and that was pre-flood. It's one of the reasons that God sent the flood. This is a traditional interpretation of Genesis chapter 6. And Stephen, I believe that interpretation of Genesis chapter 6 was around. I'm pretty sure. I'd have to go back to my old biblical commentaries, not mine. I mean, that is the old Latin biblical commentaries I used to read back in the day. One of my minor fields for my oral exams way back in high school was medieval scriptural commentary. So I used to read. What literary character is it who says, I used to go in for that a great deal at one time? Who was it who used to say that? Is that a Dickens character? Anyway. But anyhow, so yeah, but I can't remember. I can't remember with 100% confidence, but I think that the Nephilim were around. That concept of the giants was around. Certainly, we see something very like it here. If he's not thinking of Genesis 6 explicitly. Okay, so yeah, we've got, and the giants are they're like the cherry on the top of this, like, massive sundae, right? And notice that Emperor Lucius is keeping them as his bodyguard, right? Now, notice what else we see. Anyone else? So now stop ignoring the names. I told you to ignore the names. Don't ignore the names. Apart from everybody in the world, how else would we characterize who or what we see here in this? Who, again, another answer to the question: who is arrayed against Arthur? Who is the enemy here? The key here is, it's true, Julie, that we do have sort of ancient worthies, again, especially when we're thinking about like the memories of Alexander the Great, and there are two memories of Alexander the Great here, right? Not only the Macedoni, which I already mentioned, but of course Alessander here, which means Alexandria, of course. We're talking about Egypt here, yeah. Remember, we're in the 15th century, right? So, Araby, Turkey, Saracens. That's an important word, right? Saracens means Muslims. Okay, that's a medieval synonym, essentially. The medievals didn't even know the word Muslim. They called them Saracens. They called the Muslims Saracens. These are the bad guys, right? And I'm not saying that they would have associated every nation that's being listed here as bad guys, but bad guys are featured here. And the kind of cue that we have for that, even if you missed it in the list, right? Notice at the end, and thus the emperor with all his horrible people, right? These are horrible people, right? And I don't think that's not meant to be a moral condemnation of each one individually, right? And you can say, of course, that this is horrible in the sense of like his army is so massive that it inspires horror, right? It is quite possible that that is at least one sense in which he means it. But I think there's more to it than that too, as well. These are clearly the bad guys. And that's, that becomes extremely clear when we're actually reading the battles, right, and the descriptions of the scenes. Again, the giants, who are the children of fiends, who are engendered with fiendus, that's another clue, right? That these are the bad guys. Another fairly clear signal here. I should pause here for a second. This, of course, is another one of these places when you're reading a medieval text that it's really important to put aside your modern perspective and try to understand where they're coming from. Okay, you don't have to agree with it. You don't have to like it, but you do need to understand it. And from the perspective of a 14th or 15th century English person, the Muslims are simply the enemy. Right, they are simply the enemy. The Muslims are those not only the people who they've been fighting against in the Crusades, and who by this time, remember, by the 1500s, there have been many Crusades. So they've been at war with them for hundreds of years, essentially. And not only that, they're also encroaching through southern Europe, right? Spain and France. So there's the more local threat from the south. They've been at war with him for generations. There would be very few of these, knightly folks like Malory's, sort of class, right, of people who, don't have family and ancestors who have been killed in the Crusades. So this is long-standing bad blood here, and they're simply, in almost all cases, just simply the bad guys. Now we're going to get a really interesting thing, which is going to be a foreshadowing of an even more interesting thing at the end. So we'll see if I can get to that part of today's reading. That is, I'm referring, of course, to Sir Gawain's encounter with the Saracen knight at the end, Sir Priamus, who becomes a knight of the Round Table. But I will hope to get there. But okay, Julie, I don't know where the term Saracens came from. I am embarrassed to say. The Paynims, exactly, Wesley. There are Paynims all over the place in this list. Paynim is a good Middle English word, and that just means pagan. That means that's a very generic word for people who are not Christians. They're all called Paynims. Saracens are an important subset of Paynims, but sometimes you will see Malory use the phrase that Paynim knight, and it just means a knight who's not a Christian, which also, of course, in turn generally means a knight who's not a European, essentially. Okay. All right, so we've established who the enemy is, but notice the effect of this, right? Notice how this is setting up Arthur. Notice how this determines the story, right? Arthur is the aggressor, but Arthur is the underdog, right? And not just the underdog. He's the underdog fighting for good and righteousness against all of the questionable hordes of the world, right? So anyway, that's this is setting him up in a very important way, right? Let's see. Sweet Jack, I see. Ethiopia is referred to. Where is it? It's somewhere. Didn't we get Ethiopia? I was sure we got Ethiopia in that list somewhere. Maybe I made that up. Anyway, sorry. Brian says it feels a bit like Sauron's host approaching Minas Tirith. Yeah, a little bit. I think it's supposed to sort of have that effect, except, Brian, you'll notice the difference, right? Again, think about like the shape of the story as a whole. When the armies of Sauron are approaching Minas Tirith, the story is, we have like the last defenders of light with darkness closing in around it, trying to fend it off, right? Arthur's story is importantly different. He's going into the home. This is Arthur charging through the Black Gate, right? And he's not just setting a trap. Arthur is going to go to the Black Gate and blow the doors off their hinges and take Mordor by force. That's the plan, right? He is defying openly, setting his standard against all of the united kings of the entire rest of the world in order to defend, well, not just what's right, of course, in order to defend the honor of England and of his realm. But of course, that's being put in terms which are almost but not quite in terms of good and evil here. An aggressive underdog. Exactly, Karita. Yeah. Like a terrier. A little bit like a terrier. I'm not sure that Arthur would appreciate that simile, but all right. Arthur has a dream, and of course I'm interested in his dream. But okay, I'm a little puzzled by something too. But anyway, okay. As the king was in his cog and lay in his cabin, he fell in a slumbering, and dreamed of how a dreadful dragon did drench much of his people, and come flaying on wing out of the west parties. And his head, him seemed, was enamelled with azure, and his shoulders shone as the gold, and his womb was like miles of a marvellous hue, and his tile was full of tatters, and his feet were flourished as it were fine sable. And his claws were like clean gold, and an hideous flame of fire there flew out of his mouth, like as the land and the water had flamed all on fire. Than him seemed that come out of the Orient a grimly bear, all black in a cloud, and his paws were as big as a post. He was all tarongalid with lugerand loches, and he was the foulest beast that ever any man see. He roamed and roted so rudely that marvile it was to tell. Then the dreadful dragon dressed him against him, and come in the sind like a falcon, and freshly strike as the bear. And again the grisly bear cut us with his grisly tusks, and his breast and his brile was bloody, and the red blood riled all over the sea. Then the worm wind as away, and flay as upon hecht, and come doon with such a such, and touched the bear on the ridge, that fro the top fro the tile was 10 foot large, and so he renteth the bear, and brennes him up clean, that all fell on powder, both the flesh and the bones, and so it fluttered abroad on the sea. All right, that's a fun dream. So womb, womb. Don't worry, womb just means belly. It's very generic. Everybody's got a womb. It's a much less anatomically precise term than it will later become. It just means your belly or abdomen generally. So I know that's a little bit confusing there. This is not a pregnant dragon that we're reading about. So, okay. Here's the main thing I'm confused about here. There has got to be a mistake here. I'm quite sure that Malory has made a mistake. I thought it was a typo at first, and I'm going back and checking, and no, it's not a typo. It really says it's not a bear. It's clearly not a bear he's fighting. It's a boar he's fighting, right? I mean, that's obviously a boar. I mean, first, like, that his paws, I know it says paws, but paw is a fairly generic word for an animal's foot, too. Is as big as a post, right? So we're talking about, like, the feet, the hooves of the boar. But he's got tusks, right? He's got grisly tusks. Boars always have grisly tusks, right? And not only does he have grisly tusks, but he has a... what is it? He's got a ridge. He's got a ridge, right? From on his back that goes down his back from his head to his tile, 10 foot large, right? Bears don't have ridges on their backs, but boars do. And he roots. Exactly, James. He's rooting. I mean, come on. Yes, Bruce, he certainly does have nasty big pointy teeth, and I'm sure that that's what he means. And it's conceivable that he's saying that the bear's teeth were so large that it was like unto the tusks of a boar. But I don't think so. I really think that it's a boar. And I don't know wherein the mistake comes, how a boar gets replaced by a bear. But I am so convinced, and actually I was really interested to find that some of you, I think, are reading the Audible or listening to the Audible, the unabridged Audible recording that I was mentioning. There was the new one and the old one, and I was recommending the new one. I was really interested to find that in that newer Audible recording, he actually corrected it. He actually made it, and he just said boar all the way through, which is interesting, right? I was a little bit daring, but I agreed with that. Anyway, yeah, I thought that was interesting. Oh, by the way, for those of you who are listening to the Audible recording, I want to nitpick, but there's a word that he keeps messing up that has been kind of niggling at me, and I wanted to just mention it because it's confusing. There's a word, bested. bested, which the modern English reader in Audible keeps reading as bested. That, like, King Arthur was hard bested in the battle. And I know it looks like that, but that is not the word. The word is bested, like bestead is that word. He was hard bested, means like he was hard put to it. He was, they were laying about him fiercely. He was being given a really stiff fight, but it doesn't mean he was being bested. He wasn't beaten. He's just having a hard go of it, right? But he's going to persevere and he's going to win through. Again, bested means defeated. Bested means somebody's attacking you, right? So I just, little side note, the guy keeps pronouncing that wrong, and I'm like, I think he doesn't. I mean, every time he says, I'm like, I think that word does not mean what you think it means. So I just wanted to mention that. Okay, anyway, but back to the bear or boar. Okay. Karita bears also root. They don't root like boars do. I don't think so. And yes, of course, Karita, you could have a bear with tusks and a mohawk in a dream. Yes, a dream bear could be very different, but why? Right? Why? Lil Atomic suggests that it was autocorrect, that was the problem, that boar was autocorrected to bear. It's probably autocorrect is a fairly persistent problem in medieval manuscripts, so that's probably it. Yeah. Kurt thinks a bear with tusks is more fun. Fine. Yeah. Yeah, Stephen, autocorrected to bear with an E at the end. Exactly. Yeah. No, this is Middle English autocorrect. So yeah, it would be. Yeah. Actually, I never thought of that before, but scribal errors are often like error correct, actually. Come to think of it, that's kind of a good analogy. When a scribe comes to a hard word and is like, oh, surely you meant this other word, which is much more common and much simpler. You are just making it harder than it needs to be, right? So I'm going to replace the word that you wrote with this other more common word that I think is what you probably meant. Scribes did that all the time. So actually, I was absolutely joking before, but it's completely true. Autocorrect was a habitual problem in medieval manuscripts. My goodness. Yeah. It's so obvious when you think of it, but I never really thought of that before, but it's totally true. That's just how it worked. It's almost like Apple modeled autocorrect on medieval manuscripts, actually. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Stephen Cover says he's now imagining office assistant for monks. It looks like you're illuminating a manuscript. Would you like some help with that? Yeah, probably. Okay. Anyway, forget about the boar. Whether be it a boar or be it a bear, where are we here? Now, several of you were saying this sounds a little bit like the book of Revelation or a little bit like the book of Daniel. In other words, the book that the book of Revelation sounds like, right? Yes, this is a vision in an apocalyptic style. Absolutely. I believe that it is deliberately modeled after the visions in the book of Daniel specifically. With the different, the different beasts that he sees and stuff. Notice there's also just a little touch of Nebuchadnezzar's dream in there as well, especially in the description of the dragon, right? With the enameled blue head and the gold shoulders and the womb, his belly, like miles of a marvelous hue, and his tail full of not taters, dole or a stroke. There's no potatoes in his tail. He has tatters in his tail. Yeah, yeah, it does sound a little bit like the statue described in Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And yeah, Karita, he does literally powder his enemy. Absolutely, yeah. He burns him up so cleanly that he falls into powder. The boar / bear falls into powder after he is incinerated. Right? I mean, it's like the self-cleaning cycle in your oven. What the dragon does to the so it doesn't matter at the end of the day whether it's a boar or a bear, because it's powdered at the end and floated abroad on the sea. The ashes, right, the powdered ashes of the bear boar are scattered abroad on the sea after that. So he like literally cremates it. Okay. What's going on here? How can we because, oh man, we've got no Merlin anymore. If we had Merlin, he'd explain this in a heartbeat. But fortunately, there's a philosopher, right? It was easier for philosophers to find profitable work back in these days. Anon the king waked, and was sore abashed of his dream, and in all haste he sent for a philosopher, and charged him to tell what signified his dream. Sir, said the philosopher, the dragon thou dreamest, the dragon thou dreamest of, betokens thine own person, that thus here sails with these sicker knictis, and the colour of his winges is thy kingdomes that thou hast with thy knictis won. And his tile that was all tattered signified your noble knictis of the Rune Table. And the bear that the dragon slew above in the cloudy, I don't know why it's cloudy, I don't know what the I is there for. Is that a typo? I don't think so. Betokens some tyrant that tormenteth thy people. Other thou art like to fight with some giant, boldly in battle, by thyself alone. It could be that too. Therefore, of this dreadful dream dread they but a little, and care not now, Sir Conqueror, but comfort thyself. Okay. Lots of Harry Potter jokes being made about the philosopher here. Yeah. Sarah Yasin says that this philosopher was clearly like an early Jungian, right? Yeah, the philosopher's answer is, you are the monster in your dream, right? Yeah, no, that's great. Right. Dread thee but a little. Dread thee but a little does translate to something like, don't worry about it, right? Or don't worry about it too much, is how I would paraphrase that. Dread thee but a little. Don't worry about it too much, is what he's saying here. No, so Mike, I think so it does make it sound like, the philosopher makes it sound like the battle between the dragon and the bear boar was in the clouds, right? But I don't think what happened. I think because he's rooting, right? I think in the earth. So I think it's the dragon who's in the clouds, and he descends, right, like a falcon, wham, and then incinerates him. So I'm not sure this philosopher's getting his text quite right, to tell you the truth. He is the dragon. Now, that, of course, we should have been suspicious of from the beginning. He's our, Pendragon. That's his, that's the whole thing. So, okay. But notice, Sarah, coming back to your Jungian point here, it is interesting, isn't it? It is interesting that the dragon is dreadful, right? The dragon doesn't sound like the hero of this dream. I mean, after all, he kills much of his people. Drench is not a good word when used of people, right? It doesn't just mean he's going to soak them in water, right? That's not good. That means slaughter, right? And come flaying on wing out of the west parties. Then we got the description of his, person. and a hideous flame of fire there flew out of his mouth, like as the land and the water had flamed all on fire. That's probably a good thing. Probably. Right. The flame of virtue, right? No, you're right, Mike. So is the philosopher. Yes, that it is in a cloud. I see, right. He's in a cloud. No, the philosopher's still wrong. Yeah, I think he's still wrong. Well, no, I'm sorry. When I read that, a grimly bear, all black in a cloud, I thought that meant he was like there was like fog around him, like it was, like they turned on the dry ice machines when the bear boar came in, right? So he was in a cloud, like in a cloaked in shadow, like he was coming in cloaked in shadow. I didn't take that to mean he was actually up in the clouds. I suppose that's possible. The philosopher seems to think so. Yeah, the philosopher seems to think so. He's probably right. I'm probably wrong. The dry ice effect would be good, though, wouldn't it? Some of his explanation doesn't really seem to explain. And his title, that was all to tattered, signified your noble knights of the Round Table. Why? How? They're tattered? The Knights of the Round Table? In what sense tattered? Tattered in the sense that many of them are about to die in this battle, and so there's going to be a bunch of openings on the Round Table fairly soon? I don't know why it is that, because I mean it's the tattering, right? It's the tattering of the tale that he's pointing to, right? That's what gives, that's the tell, right? That's the giveaway that shows that it means his Knights of the Round Table. Now I was thinking, so Marilyn is suggesting that it means it just has like individual spikes, right? And it's full of spikes. And so each spike represents a different knight. And so that's why it's the Round Table. It's possible. But and if all we had, Marilyn, was the first description, right? When he says his tile was full of tatters, right? Okay. If we understand tatters then as not tatters, like not it's ripped and torn, but rather it's got like lots of individual bits sticking off of it, right? Then okay. But it's, the way I'm all to tattered makes it sound like it's been, like it's something, when to is put at the beginning of a verb like that, or past participle in this case, it suggests action, like the thing was done to it, right? So it really sounds like something has been happening to it. No, Dolores Stroke, and no, Catriana. I do not think the potatoes reading still makes the most sense. I have to disagree with you there. But yeah, Karita, I agree. Merlin would have done a much better job explaining this. But let's back up for a second, because of course we've missed the first important point, right? The first important point is the kind of dream that this was, right? The kind of interpretation that it asks for. We know we're in a particular place here when you're having this kind of allegorical dream. A message is being sent to you. This is generally, I use the word apocalyptic, right? But let's, all right, I'm going to try not to ramble on this, as apocalyptic visions is, wow, I'm like, this is like the way back day for me. First, remembering my my oral exams in grad school on biblical commentaries, and now my PhD dissertation, in which I talked a lot about apocalyptic visions. And the word apocalyptic doesn't mean what it the word apocalypse in the modern usage means exclusively like disaster that happens at the end of the world, right? Whenever anyone is talking about, whenever anyone is using the word apocalyptic, they are meaning like the end of the world or the end of civilization. That's like what the word means. But the word literally means, as Mike and Bruce both said, and James, revealing, uncovering. Apocalypse is the Greek word that is the title of the last book of the Bible, right? Which is translated in English as Revelation, right? It is the apocalypse. Literally, as James Oakley says, the uncovering, right? That's what apocalyptic visions are. An apocalyptic vision is not a vision of the end of the world. An apocalyptic vision is a vision that reveals something, that uncovers something, right? That sends a message. It's not, in a sense, it's like, so when we use the word apocalypse, we always mean the end of the world. When we use the word prophetic, we always mean predicting the future. But that's not actually the sense of the word prophetic in the Old Testament, certainly. An Old Testament prophet is not somebody who goes around predicting the future professionally. That happens sometimes, but that's not their primary job. The job of a prophet is to be God's mouthpiece, right? They go around and say, message for you from God, knock it off or you're in big trouble, right? Like that's the kind of thing that they go around and say. They're great fun at parties, especially if you happen to be, like the king of, well, almost anywhere, frankly. But if you're a king, you're not a big fan of these prophets. But anyhow, that's what prophets normally do. But we, in modern usage, tend to think of prophecy as the thing that's predicting the future. That's what apocalypse was, right? When something about the future is being revealed, and it tends to be revealed in this mode, right? Nebuchadnezzar's dream, when Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 2 has the dream of the statue with the golden head and the silver chest and the brass belly and the iron legs. That's, we talked about that last week or something. That's an apocalyptic dream as well, revealing what is to come in the future. And ultimately, of course, also the end of that order of civilization too. It is apocalyptic. It is an apocalyptic vision in the modern sense, ultimately. So exactly, Stephen. When prophets did predict the future, it was primarily, yes, that was them showing their bona fides, right? That was them proving that that their messages were legit, right? That's how you could tell a legit prophet. But again, it wasn't the core job of prophecy, but it was the core job of apocalypse, right? That's what the apocalyptic genre is. In that sense, this is an apocalyptic dream that Arthur has, right? It is being revealed to him what's going to happen. Notice a lot of Merlin's stuff was apocalyptic. It just wasn't in the apocalyptic mode, right? He didn't get all like, and then I beheld a beast which had all these things which need to be interpreted allegorically, right? Merlin didn't do allegory. He just did plot spoilers, right? But plot spoilers, the dominant mode of apocalypse, which Merlin is not in, right? The dominant mode of apocalypse is this, right? Dream or vision, which is to be allegorically interpreted, detail by detail. He could probably, if Arthur gave him a raise, this philosopher could probably tell him in detail, like which of the kingdoms that he's conquered is represented by which color, in the like wings and claws of the dragon and stuff like that. He just doesn't go into that much detail. Again, I think probably because he's shooting for a pay raise, but Dolores Stroke says, one would think the most useful dreams would have to be the ones where you lose. Yeah, and Arthur's going to have one like that, actually, later on, before he loses. But not yet, because he's not. Yeah, he's still on the upward swing. Or for those of you who remember your Boethius, right? He's still on this part of the Wheel of Fortune, right? He's not quite at the top yet. He's still probably about 2/3 of the way up the upside of the Wheel of Fortune. And, but it's going to keep on turning, of course. That's why the book is called, Caxton titled the book Le Morte d'Arthur, because we all know the wheel's going to turn, right? Okay. Let's keep going. And Thon come there an husbandman out of the country, and talketh unto the king wonderful wordes, and said, Sir, here is beside a great giant of Jana, that tormenteth thy people, more than 500 and many more of our children, that hath been his sustenance all the 7 winters. Yet is the sot never ceased, but in the country of Constantine he hath killed and destroyed all our Knav children, and this nicht he hath claimed the Duchess of Bretagne, as she rode by a river with her rich kneechtes, and led her unto yonder mount to lie by her while her life lasteth. Many folk has followed him, more than 500 barones and bachelors and kneechtes full noble, but ever she shrieked wonderly loud, so that the sorrow of that laddie cover shall we never. She was thy cousin's wife, Sir Howell the Hend, a man that we call nigh of thy blood. Now as thou art our rightwas king, rue on this laddie and on thy liege people, and revenge us as a noble conqueror should. Oh man. So this is bad, right? There's this giant, right? And this giant is an awful giant. And he's been eating their children for 7 years. He's destroyed all their Knav children, right? All the boys. That means boys. So every single boy child from the land has been eaten by this giant, right? Because this is what he does, right? And they're helpless, right? 500 barons and bachelors and kneechtes, they couldn't do anything, right? But the description of the terrible loud shrieking of the Duchess, right, as she's being dragged to this horrible fate, he's going to take her up to the mount and lie by her while her life lasteth, which is not going to be long, right? He's going to rape her to death very quickly. Klecht, that means grabbed, kidnapped, captured. Yeah. No, Karita, he absolutely does rape her to death. And I didn't do this passage because I was tempted to do it, but I'm like, no, I'm not going to do this passage just because it's really explicit and horrible. But I mean, he describes it, right? She's slit up to the navel, right? She's ripped to the belly button and killed. Yeah. She's dead that night, actually. He rapes her to death right away. It's he's awful. It's all, but the giant is all, the focus on the giant is all about his fleshly lusts in more than one sense, right? He both has this raging lust for women and is a sexual predator, routinely raping women to death. And also fleshly lust in the sense of his desire for flesh, right? To eat the flesh, especially of children and of babies. Dolores Stroke, I agree. In earlier Arthurian stories, she often dies out of fright or before the rape. Malory is especially violent here, yes. And I think, Dolores Stroke, if I'm remembering correctly, I believe he's following, in most of his gruesome descriptions, I believe he's following the alliterative Morte Arthur, which does have the most hideous description of this giant. This giant is a feature in much Arthurian literature, but I'm pretty sure that the alliterative Morte Arthur is the most R-rated description of this giant of any of the accounts that we get of him, and I'm almost certain that I remember the rotisserie babies that he describes. That's I'm almost positive that's he's taking that from the alliterative Morte as well. Karita, I'm not sure why boy children specifically. We'll get back to that. Ask that question again in a minute. I want to go on more horrible things first. So, King Arthur sneaks up by himself. Nobody else knows that he's going. Even Arthur and even Kay and Bedwyr, whom he's brought with him, don't know where he's going or exactly what they know where he's going, but they don't know what he's doing, right? They don't know about the giant. So he's sneaking up on his own, and there's this old woman there. this old woman who is apparently too old for him to rape anymore. I think he's raped her already, like back in the day, but she survived it apparently, and is living this hideous life, serving the giant by force, as his slave. Karina's asking, does he also eat girls, but they're only counting the boys? No, the way that he specifies, I'm pretty sure he eats only the boy children. I'm pretty sure of it. Yeah. Yeah, Bruce, you and I are thinking on the same lines here. I'll come back to that in a second. Okay, hang on. All right, so here's the poor old slave lady. Dame, said the king, I come for the noble conqueror, Sir Arthur, for to treat with that tyrant for his liege people. Fie on such treatise, she sighed then, for he setteth not by the king, nor by no man else. But an thou have brought Arthur's wife, Dame Guinevere, he will be more blither of her than thou hadst given him Hathendel France. And but if thou have brought her, press him not too nigh. Look what he hath done unto 15 kinges. He hath made him a coat full of precious stones, and on the borders thereof is the beardes of 15 kinges, and they were of the greatest blood that dured on earth. Other farm he had none of 15 realmes. This present was sent him to this last Christmas, that they sent him in Fife for saving of their people. And for Arthur's wife he lodges him here, for he hath more treasure than ever had Arthur or any of his elders. And now thou shalt find him at supper with 6 canav children. And there he hath made pickle and powder with many precious wines, and 3 fire maidens that turn is the broach that bid is to go to his bed. For they 3 shall be dead within 4 hours, or the filth is fulfilled that his flesh asketh. Horrible, horrible. So yeah, so he's there like turning the spit, and that's what the brooch is. The brooch means the spit. So it's literally describing 6 canav children, 6 baby boys impaled on a spit that the 3 maidens are being forced to turn over the fire to cook the babies rotisserie style before he rapes them to death later that night. That's yeah. Oh, and by the way, that for solving of their people, right? This present was sent him this last Christmas. They sent him in Fife for solving of their people. That doesn't mean that the giant saved them from something, right? He spared them himself, right? Like it. Instead of me killing you all or eating you, right, you can give me this present instead. That's what it's a bribe to the giant. Yeah. So this is, as I say, extremely gruesome. What is he? Oh, okay. I won't even get into the pickle and the powder then. We don't even want to know about the pickle and the powder. Yeah, so what's going on here? The dream is a hint, right? Arthur, so let's not forget the context, right? Arthur is setting off to fight against Rome, and we saw what that means. He's not just fighting against Rome, right? He's fighting against everybody. He's setting off to fight against Rome. On the way, he has this dream, and the dream is of monstrous, terrifying dragon him, right? And the bear boar, which is Rome, right? Which is his enemy. And then he lands. And we're told this is a foe that you're going to fight. Or maybe, it could be a giant that you're going to do single combat with. That's like the alternative interpretation, right? So the philosopher, in his interpretation of the dream, already prompts us in our reception of this passage, right? Of this scene with the giant. Because this is by far the most random event in this entire section, right? Like, why are we now interrupt this, military campaign to bring you this random fight with a random giant, right? Who is horrible, but That's having now done our giant slaying, we're ready to move on, right? But there's this clear connection, which I think would be clear even if the philosopher hadn't made it explicit, right? That Arthur's fight with the giant here is meant to be a parallel. It's like a little synecdoche of what he's doing here in Europe, right? The giant is Rome. The giant is all of the, sort of the rest of the non-English world that is arrayed against him. He is the underdog, just as this giant is so huge and so fearsome that no one, even 500 knights at once, have never been able to stand up to him before. So too, of course, no knights, no kings have successfully stood up to Rome either, right? Trust me, just roll with that, right? Don't tell the Germans, don't tell the Parthians. Nobody's ever stood up to Rome before. So there's an obvious kind of connection here. So there are a couple different ways that we can understand the giant thing here, right? On the one hand, this is political. It's like a little political allegory that he is enacting here. And again, the beard thing. This is now, notice you will remember this from King Ryan's that we got before, right? Who also had a beard cloak. Apparently it's a thing that tyrants do. Again, this is an obvious sort of parallel or sort of alternative version of that story, except this time it's not just an aggressive local king who is refusing to submit to Arthur and who sends him the insulting message asking for his beard once it has a chance to grow out a little bit more, right? Because it's Arthur when he first takes over the throne. But rather, so it's not only a parallel like that. It's not only saying the same thing, but larger and more gruesomely. But again, look, it makes it in the context, right? It makes it even more clear that this is a characterization of Rome. The modern Roman Empire, modern, boy, that's a weird word to use in this context. The contemporaneous Roman Empire. The Roman Empire is imagined in the 15th century as being contemporary with Arthur in the 5th century, right? That's where we are here. That Rome is like this giant, strong, powerful, fearsome, devouring, right? Rapacious, that will seize the things that are most precious to you and take it for itself, claim it for itself, that will eat your children, right? And will wear around a beautiful cloak that is adorned with the beards of kings. Exactly. Yeah. Mike says the giant is oppression and victimization and chaos, and Arthur has brought order and honor. Yeah. I mean, that is what's, I think that's a good characterization of what's happening here. And again, I think that one of the purposes of this, the reason to have this kind of an incident, the role that this plays in the story is it's like, remember in Hamlet when they put on the play within the play, and when the players are doing the play within the play, they start with the dumb show, right? And that was a common thing on the 16th century stage. So first you walk through the actions of the scene in dumb show, and then you do the scene, right? So the audience has already had a preview. It's like a little synopsis. It's a visual synopsis at the beginning, right? Here's what's going to happen in this scene. Now you're ready for it. We'll do it for you, right? With dialogue this time. The giant fight here is like a dumb show prior to the full act, right, of the fight with Rome. It's like, I don't know, it's like the Cliff Notes version. This is the interpretive key. If you're remembering Arthur fighting the giant, then you're in the right frame of mind for the whole rest of the story, right? That's the story that's going to be played out in, greater detail at greater length as we move forward. The other way to think about it, Dolores Stroke was suggesting this earlier on. The giant is eating boys and raping duchesses and emasculating other rulers and enslaving women. And then Arthur is on the other side of that, so we can think of that, as Dolores Stroke suggests, as Arthur is the sort of chivalrous side of the masculine gender here, right? Yeah, in a sense, this is like there is a sense in which the giant is like, masculinity horribly exaggerated. All of the and not even just thinking about it in gendered terms, but even thinking of it in sort of quasi-political terms, right? To be aggressive, to be, taking what you want and forcing other people to submit to you. That's what real kings do, right? That's what manly kings do. And Arthur is standing up against that. So I do think that it's one of the reasons that Malory really likes this scene, is that he's able to establish Arthur as like, Arthur is not like this, right? Rome is like this. Arthur is not like this, right? These are all the things which are, remember back to the oath, right, that he had all of his knights take before, right? Arthur stands for something different, that is not just simply the use of power, right? The exertion of force to subject others to your will, however horrible that is. But it's an also kind of interestingly set a self-aware kind of moment too, I think, for Malory. Remember in the dream, the dragon was, well, it was terrifying, and that's probably good. It's probably terrifying in a good way, but when you first read the dream, it's not obvious that the dragon is a good guy, right? It's a horrible dragon. And filling the land and the sea with flames could be good, possibly, but not necessarily, right? Similarly, back to your question before, Karita, about eating boy children. Does he ever eat girl children? No, I don't think that. There are two reasons why I don't think this giant eats girl children. One is that he's waiting for them to grow up because he has other intentions for the girl children other than eating them. The other thing, the other reason that I don't think he eats girl children is, and this Bruce was picking up on this before, it hits a little close to home, doesn't it? There's another ruler who rules over many realms who once collected boy children from his countryside and had them all destroyed, right? Arthur, in Arthur's worst moment, he did that, right? He played the role of Herod, which was a very bad role. The role of Herod was, Herod was an almost comically wicked character in the medieval mystery plays and stuff, for instance, when they were doing, when they were depicting the Bible stories. Herod is not a good look, and Arthur played the role of Herod when Mordred was born. So there are ways in which the giant is, I think, also a kind of cautionary tale, right? There's a little bit of beware lest you become this, right? On the one hand, this is like the enemy that you are going to overcome. So Arthur versus the giant, again, is like the foreshadowing of, what Arthur is going to, what's going to be later on. But it's also, I think, potentially a warning. That dragon could easily become a tyrant, right? Could easily be, remember, it starts off by drenching many of its people, right? It's causing the death of many of its people. I think its own people at the very beginning of that dream. And that's Arthur too. So I do think that this vision here, not vision, this is live action, right? This is not a dream. This little allegory that Arthur is himself enacting here also has relevance to him himself, and he needs to remain the opponent of this kind of thing. And this is why I dislike especially the rest of the Emperor Lucius section of Malory, because he doesn't fully stick with that. Let's keep going. I wanted to explain this because I wanted to make sure everybody got that this was funny. And especially since, I once did a passage because I was wanting to point out that sarcasm was being used, right? Here, Arthur is making a joke. This is a joke, okay? And I want to make sure everybody gets the joke because it kind of made it, it's not obvious, right? So remember, when Arthur, he brought Kay and Bedwyr with him, but he didn't tell him about the giant. He didn't say, y'all stay here, I'm going to go up the hill and fight a massive giant single-handedly, right? He doesn't say that. He says there's a monastery up on the hill, and he's going up there to worship, right? So he's like, okay, I'm going to visit this like monastery and shrine up on the hill, right? And then the next thing they know, he comes down, and him and the giant are rolling down the hill, right? Over and under on top of each other. By the way, notice that as well, right? Sometimes Arthur is on top and sometimes he's beneath on the one hand. This sort of shows the struggle between the two of them, right? But also, it's like they are like each other, in a sense. There's a sort of a potential similarity as they're tumbling down the hill together. But anyway, so he's comes rolling down the hill with this giant in his arms. Now he's already given the giant several mortal wounds, right? But remember, Kay and Bedwyr think that he went up there to pray, right, at a shrine, at a monastery. And then here he comes rolling down the hill with a giant, right? Everybody covered in blood. Alas, sighed Sir Kay, we are forfeit forever. Yonder is our lord overfallen with a fiend. Right, so he thinks sensibly that some demon has taken physical form and is attacking Arthur. And he feels bad because he's like, we weren't there to back him up, right? We let him go on his own, and now we have forfeited our honor, right? Because we failed to protect our, here we let him go off by himself, and he got attacked by a demon, and now what are we supposed to do? It is not so, sighed the king, but help me, Sir Kay, for this corsaint that I have cledged out of the yonder clothes. That's the joke. You get so he calls it a corsaint, right? Corsaint literally means the body of the saints. Okay, so a corsaint is a holy relic, usually a piece of the body, sometimes of the clothing of a dead saint. And most shrines and everything featured one of these relics. Relics were a really big deal. Especially in the later Middle Ages, and so when he said that he was going up to the Clwys, he was implying that there was a shrine up there, that there was that they had a holy relic, and that's why he was going to go up there to pray. And so he's calling the giant a corsaint. He's like, oh, so I've cledged this. I've taken in Mike. By the way, I think that's the same word, clegged. So just as the giant clegged the Duchess, right? He's clegged this corsaint. He's like, I stole the relic, right? Help me with this relic that I've stolen from the Clwys, from the cloister up on the hill. That's a joke, right? It's a joke. It's not a relic, right? But he's characterizing. He's characterizing it's a comical opposite, right? Instead of a holy relic, he's come down with this enormous, ugly, bleeding, murderous giant, right? And Bedwyr rolls with it. In faith, sighed Sir Bedwyr, this is a fool carle, and cocked the corsaint out of the king's armies, and there he sighed, I have mickle wonder that Michael be of such a mocking, that ever God wold suffer him to abide in heaven, and if saintes be such that service Jesu, I will never seek for none, by the faith of my body. Okay, so Bedweir's going to roll with it, right? I have mickle wonder, and Michael be of such a mocking, right? So notice his wordplay as well, right? Mickle, which means great. I have great wonder. So the pun, Mike, exactly. It's really good, right? On Mickle and Michael, right? I have, because it's Mont Saint Michel, right? Is the mountain that they just went up. It's the Mount of Saint Michael. Who is Saint Michael? Who's Saint Michael? Anybody know who Saint Michael is? Yeah, the angel, the archangel Michael. He's the Gabriel is the most famous of the archangels because he's the one who came down and did the Annunciation thing. Right, he got a lot of press for the Annunciation thing, but Michael is the big dude. Michael is the military captain. He is the captain of the hosts of heaven. He's the one. He's the dragon slayer dude. That's right. Absolutely, Dory. He's exactly Bruce, the head of heaven's army. That's it. So he's a saint. Yeah, exactly. Right, Mike. Yeah. Now that doesn't mean that there was like going to be a bit of Saint Michael. If they had a bit of the archangel Michael, that would be alarming. That's not to say that that didn't exist. I mean, I remember a story in which someone pulls out a feather and claims that it's a feather that fell from the angel Gabriel's wings when he came and did the Annunciation. But that guy was scamming when he said that. But it's possible that there were actual relics like that. Yeah, exactly, Mike. Not all saints are human. Angels are saints. Saint is in the sense in which he's using it here are fair is in a sort of a generic sense, a more generic sense. Yeah. Okay. Like any joke that needs this much explanation is just not good, isn't just not working. How many of you have seen a medieval reliquary? If you've seen a medieval reliquary, the reliquary means the like box that the relic itself is kept in. So medieval reliquaries are often, even usually, shaped like the thing that they have in them. For instance, if you have a relic which is bones from the hand of a particular saint, the reliquary that you build to store the holy bones in will be shaped like a human hand, usually, right? And like if you've got a piece of the toe of somebody, it'll be like shaped like a foot, right? He's joking. So Bedweir is joking that the giant's body, right, the corpse of the giant, is the reliquary. So that they joking that they on the non-existent cloister on top of Mont Saint Michel had a relic of Saint Michael and made a reliquary shaped like Saint Michael. And that's what Arthur stole. He didn't just steal the relic, he stole the whole reliquary. So he calls it the core saint because the core saint would be in the reliquary, right? So when Bedweir says, I have mickle wonder and Michael be of such a mocking, right? He's like, is that what Michael looks like? Right? If that's what Michael looks like, why would God ever suffer him to abide in heaven? Right? I can't even believe that. If saints be such that serves Jesu, I will never seek for none by the faith of my body. Right? I didn't know the saints were this ugly. Right? Is the joke that he's making. Right? So it's like the giant's corpse is a reliquary. You had to be there. You had to be in the 14th century for this joke to really be the knee slapper that it would have been. The point is, he's making a joke, which is not totally expected, actually. And it's more than a little bit unusual. And one of the ways, frankly, in which this is not really Malory's idiom. This is a fairly minor way, right? Arthur doesn't generally make jokes of this kind. But, you know, in this, derived from this poem, in this section, he does. Anyway, okay. Sorry for the labored explanation of the joke, but I wanted to make. I was thinking that passage might just be totally puzzling to many. All right, let's move on to bigger issues with the idiom. So Sir Gawain and Sir Bors have been sent to the Emperor Lucius as messengers from Arthur, right? So they have been escorted into the presence of the Emperor under safe conduct as the heralds, as the messengers, right, from Arthur. While there, then knight that hight Sir Gaius, that was cousin unto the Emperor, he sighed these wordes: Lo, ho, these English Bretons be braggers of kind, for ye may see how they boast and brag as they durst bait all the world. Then grieved Sir Gawain at his great wordes, and with his bourly brawn that breekt seemed, he stroke off the head of Sir Gaius the knight. And so they turned their horses, and rode over waters and woods, into they come nigh the bushment. There Sir Lionel and Sir Bedwyr were hoving still. Then the Romaines followed fast on horseback and on foot over a fire champagne into a fire wood. Then turned him Sir Bors with a fresh willa, and saw a guy knight come fast on, all flourished in gold, that bare doon of Arthur's knightes, wonderful money. Then Sir Bors espied him, he cast in furter a spear, and girded him throughout the body, that his gutters fell out, and the knight fell doon to the ground, that grisly groaned. All right. See what happened here? Gawain and Bors are given safe conduct. They left Sir Lionel and Sir Bedwyr in a bushment, right? In ambush, in a wood nearby. While they're at the parley, Sir Gawain, without challenging or warning or anything, right? He's been insulted, it's true, right? Sir Gaius insults him. But Arthur just pulls out his sword and swaps off his head. And then they turn and ride back towards the bushment, knowing the Romans are going to chase them, right? Because they've just killed that other guy. And so then they lead them into the ambush, and then they ambush a bunch of them and slaughter a bunch of them, and that's really good. Okay. Is that really good? Now, Mike, I agree. At least it wasn't a lady he was decapitating this time. As you know, between Sir Balin and Sir Gawain, we've had some bad luck with decapitating ladies, so I guess it's better than that, right? Yeah, Stephen says this seems less than thoroughly noble. Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. This kind of murder of Sir Gaius seems like kind of the sort of thing that it's not only that just like, I'm going to just pull out my sword and decapitate you without challenging you to combat or warning you or anything like that, which we've seen even King Uther, when he was going to attack the Duke of Cornwall, told him to stuff him and garnish him, right? So it's doesn't seem wholly in line with the knightly code that Malory has been building. And worse, this seems premeditated, this whole thing, right? Like he was looking, Gawain knew he was going to provoke a counterstrike by the Romans, and that's why he left the ambush. Even the ambush itself, right? Now we've seen Arthur, from the very first time we've ever seen him in battle against the 11 kings, leave a bunch of his men in the woods. But he leaves his men in the woods in those earlier passages generally to come out and reinforce him later on, right? He leaves them in the woods because he wants to fight the enemy with only a portion of his force, right? He's outnumbered to begin with, but I'm only going to take a quarter of my already outnumbered army into the field at first, because then, it's like, if I fight with my right, I cannot be, it's over too quickly, right? I cannot be satisfied. That's exactly the rationale that Arthur has. Like, so when he leaves Bors and Ban, King Bors and King Ban and their armies in the woods that first time when he's fighting with the 11 kings, and then they come out later on, it's like, I know something you do not know, right? I have 2 allies. That's been the way this has gone. But just like I'm gonna do something outrageous, morally outrageous, and then lure you to chase me and then attack you from ambush, that's different. And I'm not really a big fan. You notice the word I used in my subtitle here. This is riotous, right? This is very much in the spirit. Again, when I say these things, I'm not trying to criticize the alliterative Morte Arthur, which Malory is following here. It's a different ethos, right? The alliterative Morte Arthur is following a different ethos entirely. And within the frame of that poem, these kinds of actions are okay. The problem that I have is that when Malory is integrating it, he doesn't fully integrate it, right? He's incorporating this stuff. But this is riotous Sir Gawain. This is what Arthur was promising when he says, I'm going to bring my most riotous knights down with me to Rome. He does, right? And they're riotous, right? They're wild and crazy, and they have honor in one sense, in the sense of making big boasts and then backing them up, right? But they don't have the kind of values that Malory has been establishing. And of late, in the later sections of the first part of the book, rather carefully establishing through the different adventures and the censures of the misbehavior of knights, especially Sir Gawain, in those early adventures, and the vow, right, and all that stuff. He's been kind of laying out pretty clearly what is a Knight of the Round Table supposed to be like, and it's not this. Again, this is fine in its own way, but it's different, and it kind of bothers me a little bit. Of course, another one of the ways in which Malory is deviating from his source most forcefully is the character of Lancelot. Now, Sir Lancelot is actually mentioned in the alliterative Morte Arthur. I remember that very clearly. But he is a very, very minor role. He does almost nothing. He's just kind of in a list of knights at one point. Because Lancelot was not the big deal. It is Sir Thomas Malory who is going to make Lancelot. Sir Lancelot is not Sir Lancelot until Sir Thomas Malory. He did not invent him. He was there. He is invented by Chrétien de Troyes. And even when Chrétien invents him, he is invented to be like the greatest of the knights, sort of. But he's very specialized. He's a kind of a, I don't know. Chrétien's Lancelot is like an artistic thought experiment, but that's a totally different story. Maybe someday we should read Chrétien's Lancelot, the Knight of the Cart. That is a really interesting poem. And I'll tell you in much more detail about Chrétien's Lancelot, where you see the birth of Lancelot, the courtly lover. But the Sir Lancelot that we all think of when we hear the name Sir Lancelot is Malory's Sir Lancelot. He will not leave Lancelot to be just an idle mention. He takes the fact that Lancelot is mentioned in the alliterative Morte Arthur and seems to use that as his excuse to introduce Lancelot here, right? This is Lancelot's first adventure. He's just been made a knight and goes right off with King Arthur on his Roman campaign, right? And this is where he distinguishes himself first. When the Romaines and the Saracens espied how the gam yode, they fled with all here micht to hide their heads. Then Urkenichtes followed with a fresh fire, and slew down of the Saracens on every side. And Sir Launcelot did so great deeds of armies that day that Sir Cador and all the Romains had marvel of his micht, for there was nother king, Kaiser, nother knicht that day micht stond him any buffet. Therefore was he honoured days of his life, for never ere or that day was he proved so well, for he and Sir Bors and Sir Lionel were but lot afore at an high fest, mad all three knichtes. Bors and Lionel are his cousins. You remember King Ban and King Bors, right? Lancelot is the son of King Ban. Sir Bors and Sir Lionel are the sons of King Bors. So Bors is easy enough to remember. Lancelot has a brother as well, Sir Ector. No relation to the other Sir Ector, the stepfather of Arthur. Different Sir Ector entirely. Okay. Good. Now, so this is Lancelot distinguishing, this is, emphasizing he was just made a knight, right? And nobody could stand him a buffet, right, that day. I was trying to decide, and I'm not sure, I was trying to decide if this is another joke at the top, that the Saracens espied how the gam yode and they fled with all Hirmeek to hide their heads. Is that a turban joke? I couldn't decide if that was a turban joke about hiding their heads. I mean, obviously they're hiding their heads in fear, right? But I couldn't decide whether that was a turban joke or not. Anyway, Marilyn, great observation. The hour is really interesting. That was one of the reasons that I wanted to. Then knichtes, right? Our knights. The first person plural. The use of the first person plural. No, Malory hasn't talked like that before. But Malory is, again, it's like not Malory, right? This is another example. It's less of a big deal in that it's not like it's inconsistent with the world that he's been creating, like the riotousness kind of is. It's like using the name the Conqueror to refer to Arthur, right? I mean, yeah, Arthur in the poem is referred to as the Conqueror because it's a whole poem which is just focused on his conquering and then his death, right? Then his downfall. But, so the original alliterative Morte is like a little, it's a Wheel of Fortune story, right? But again, that's not Arthur. Like, he's not, like, all of a sudden we're calling him the Conqueror. It's just, the inconsistency bothers me a little bit. Even that point of view thing, Marilyn, the use of our here. Again, it doesn't sound like Malory. It doesn't sound like the entire rest of the book. Anyway, speaking of riotousness, though, remember, Kay has been grievously injured and Bedwyr has been grievously injured and Arthur is ticked off. You'll remember that a bunch of the battles prior to this point have been focused on captives. Remember Bors saw the gay knight, right, who is all covered in gold and everything? He's totally tricked out, right? This knight has like pimped his armor. That's what it means when they call him a gay knight. It means brightly colored with like gold and gems and stuff. Bors picks him out and he's like, that guy, right? That's the guy that I want to go after. And it's for totally mercantile purposes. They take a bunch of captives which they're planning to ransom back for money. And so if you can capture somebody very powerful and very rich, like, I don't know, the King of France, little piece of English history there, then you can get a very, very big ransom. This is in fact one of the reasons that the 100 Years' War lasted as long as it did, because it gave second sons in England something to do and a way to establish themselves. They didn't have any land, right? Didn't inherit any land, but they have a horse and a suit of armor, and if they can go and capture a French nobleman in battle, then they can ransom him back and set up their own place, right? So I mean, it's a job, right? It's an industry. And they're acting like that, right? They are taking captives and they're going to ransom them. Lancelot's first battle, when he's sent off to go and escort the prisoners to Paris, but they get ambushed, as everybody kind of knew they would, which is why they sent Lancelot and other knights with them to protect them. And they have this huge, massive battle trying to defend the prisoners. Anyway, so that's been a major feature of the battle so far. Let's take all these captives so that we can ransom them. Anon as King Arthur had a seeked of the Emperor Lucius, for king, nother for captain, he tarried no longer, and either with her swerd is swapped at other. So Sir Lucius with his swerd hit Arthur over thwert the nose, and gaf him a wound nigh unto the tongue. Sir Arthur was wroth, and gaf him another, with all the meek that in his arm was laved, that from the crest of his helm unto the bare pappes it went adown, and so ended the emperor. Than the king met with Sir Cador, his keen cousin, and pried him, kill doon clean for love of Sir Kay, my foster brother, and for the love of Sir Bedwyr that long hath me served. Therefore salve none for gold, nother for silver. For they that will accompany them with Saracens, the man that would salve them were little to prize. And therefore slay doon and save nother heathen, nother Christian. Whoa, that's intense, Arthur. Take no prisoners. Slaughter everybody. Slay doon and salve nother heathen, nother Christian. I don't care. Christian, pain him, kill 'em all, says Arthur. Why? Because he is ticked off about the wounding of Kay and Bedwyr. Both of them are going to live, turns out, right? But Arthur doesn't know that yet. And he's really mad. But anyway, he just killed Lucius, so that was easy. Though he did get a sword hit over thwert the nose, which is awkward. Almost pierced into his tongue, which is bad. Did you follow so he gaf him another. I really like that expression. Sir Arthur was wroth and gaf him another. I'm going to give you another, right? So he gaf him another with all the meek that in his arm was laved, that from the crest of his helm unto the bare pappes it went a-doon. Your pappes, your breasts are your pappes. Both men and women are, they describe the pappes of both men and women, the paps. So from the crest of the head, he bisected him all the way down to the sternum. Curry says she feels like Arthur deserves the weird face injury. Tough but fair, Curita, tough but fair. But yeah, then he's like, no, kill them all. And again, like, this is, to me, a way bigger deal than Sir Gawain, right? Like, even thinking back to the ethos that was so plainly established using Sir Gawain as a bad guy, right? Hey, when people ask for mercy, knights are supposed to give it to them, right? If you don't, you might end up decapitating a lady by mistake, right? Like Sir Gawain did. You are absolutely always give mercy when mercy is asked for. And then here's Arthur saying, nope, forget about it. Kill them all, whether they ask for mercy or not, whether they're pagans or Christians. Again, it works better in the alliterative Morte, which is a fiercer poem from the beginning and just in a different tradition. Remember, a tradition that Tolkien quite liked. It's the alliterative Morte that Tolkien uses as his primary model when he does his Arthurian poem. In a similar alliterative mode as the alliterative mode. So both the form of the poem and the overall sort of plot shape of the poem is taken from the alliterative mort, though heavily influenced, Tolkien's Fall of Arthur, heavily influenced by the later French tradition, and what we'll see in Malory as well. But anyway, so again, I'm not a big fan. His message to the Pope, Arthur's. Remember, he after the battle, he uses balmas and gummies and stuff and preserves the bodies. He lays out the bodies of the emperor and all of the other noble people that got killed. And he's sending the corpses back to Rome, right? Now say ye to the potestata and all the lordies after that I send him the tribute that I owe to Rome, for this is the true tribute that I and mine elders have lost these 10 winters, and say him as meseemes I have sent him the whole sum, and if they think it not enow, I shall amend it when he come. And furthermore, I charge you to say to them never to demand tribute ne tax of me, ne of my londes, for such treasure must they take as happens us here. Here's your tribute. I got your tribute right here, right? This is the tribute that I owe to Rome, and you're right. I've not paid tribute for 10 winters, right? We have overdue tribute that's done. Here's the tribute that we owe with interest, right? And that fierce, though again comical, right? I mean, he's this is dark humor, right? If it doesn't seem like this is enough tribute, right? If they think the sum is not quite high enough, I'll amend it when I come, right? I can add some more when I get there, right? If they don't think it's enough. An enormously ferocious, but kind of witty threat by Arthur, right? By this Arthur. It works for the alliterative mort King Arthur. In my opinion, much less so for Malory's King Arthur. I'll do it fast. Okay. Then they march down through Italy and they still take a bunch of cities and fight a whole bunch of people. And Arthur gets like really angry and attacks people very ferociously. And then the army needs food, so he sends out Sir Gawain to steal some livestock, rustle him up some grub, as it were. And then Sir Gawain meets this knight, wandering by himself, minding his own business, and so Gawain is like, shall we fight to the death? And the other guy's like, hey, let's do that. So they fight, and they both fight very fearsomely, and they both give each other very serious wounds. So the other knight, right, the stranger knight, has wounds in his torso such that, if I'm reading it correctly, his liver and lungs are exposed to the air, right? And Gawain has been pierced and apparently has an arterial bleed going on. So that's what happens right before this. So then they stop to talk after they get to that point of their battle. Fan that knicht talked to Sir Gawain, and bade him bind up his wound, or thy blade change, for thou all bebleedes this horse and thy brecht weedes, for all the barbers of Bretagne shall not thy blood staunch. For while that is hurt with this blood, bleed shall he ever. Oh, I have a magic sword, which will make you it will stop your blood from clotting in the wounds. That's handy. The sword of this guy is like the opposite of Excalibur's scabbard, right? The exact opposite. It's great. Big odd, said Sir Gawain. It graveth me but little. Yet shalt thou not fear me, for all thee great warders. Thou truest with thy talking to Tom my heart, but yet thou betidest teen or thou part hence, but thou tell me in haste, who may staunch my bleeding. I love the posturing that Gawain and the other knight do, right? The other knight is like, you better get something for that wound, because all the barbers in Britain aren't going to be able to help you, right? Pretty soon. They're not going to be able to staunch your blood, because I have a magic sword, by the way. The magic sword of anticoagulation. And barbers, by the way, everybody knows that barbers are that barbers are doctors, right? They're like the people who patch you up because they're used to, sewing up wounds because you're a barber, right? It's what you do. So just roll with it. One of my wife's a doctor, and one of her favorite phrases is, "Who's the barber here?" But anyway, okay, so he's like, "Oh yeah, so you better, all the barbers in Britain aren't going to be able to help you." And he's like, and Gawain, this is so playground, right? He's like, "I'm not worried about it, and you're trying to scare me, but it's totally not working. And you're going to be sorry if you don't tell me real quick how I can staunch this bleeding, right? There's going to be trouble in this valley, my friend." "That may I do, and I will. I could do that if I wanted to. So thou wilt succour me, that I might be fire christened, and become meek for my misdeeds. Nu mercy I Jesu beseech, and I shall become Christian, and in God steadfastly believe. And thou mightst for thy manhood have meed to thy soul." This is a Saracen knight, right? This guy is a Muslim that he's fighting with. And he's like, "I could do that. I could tell you how to staunch your wounds, but only if you help me in what I want. And that is, help me become a Christian so I can repent of my sins. And I want to become a Christian and believe steadfastly in God." If you're thinking, but wait, as a Muslim, he already believed in God. No. Muslims worship devils. Everybody knows that, right? Seriously, like that everybody knows that. So he would be learning about God for the first time if he became a Christian, just so that you know about these things from 15th century perspective. Okay. "I grout," said Sir Gawain. This conversation took an unexpected turn, right? They were still kind of posturing before, and now all of a sudden he's like, "Actually, I want to convert." So like now Sir Gawain is going to be like his godfather, right? He's gonna like stand godsib for him as he's being christened. "I grout," said Sir Gawain, "so God may help to fulfill all thy desire. Thou hast greatly hit deserved. So thou say me the south, what thou sought here, thus singly, thyself alone, and what lord or legiant thou art under." He's like, "Sure, I'll help you. No problem. That sounds fine. You seem like a deserving chap. But tell me the truth. Why were you here in the first place?" Right? Maybe, Gawain, you should have led with that instead of leading with combat, but whatever. "Sir," he said, I hight Priamus, and a prince is my father, and he hath been rebel unto Rome and overridden much of his Londis." Okay, so he's a Saracen. That's the downside. But the good news is he's a rebel to Rome. So he's a good Saracen, his father, or at least a politically convenient one in any case. But there's more, much, much more. "And my father is come of Alisander's blood, that was overlader of kings." So he's descended from Alexander the Great, by the way, my dad. Yeah. "And of Hector also was he come by the right line." He's also the linear heir of Hector of Troy, by the way, right? As well as being of the line of Alexander the Great, right? That's just my family, Wait, and there's more. "And many more were of my kindred, right? Both Judas Maccabeus and Duke Joshua." That's Joshua, like Joshua fought the Battle of Jericho. Both Joshua and Judas Maccabeus, also in his family. "And I am Alder next of Alisander and of Alfric and of all the Out Isles. I am the heir apparent of Alexandria, all of Africa, which means North Africa, the southern shore of the Mediterranean, and of all the Out Isles." Yep, that's me. David says there's no kill like overkill. Yeah. So does anybody know the common thread? What connects all of the guys that he claims ancestry from? Anybody? Does anybody know? Alexander the Great, Judas Maccabeus, Hector of Rome, Joshua. Military leaders, yes. Not only military leaders, these are 4 of the 9 worthies, right? So there are 9 worthies. The 9 worthies are the great heroes, generally military heroes. And they're divided into 3 sets of 3. There's the 3 ancient worthies. There's the 3 biblical worthies. And there's the 3 Christian worthies. Okay? The 9 worthies are Alexander the Great, Hector of Troy, and Julius Caesar. He's the 3rd one of the ancient worthies. He's the one that's not mentioned. But of course, you wouldn't want to be kin to Julius Caesar, because Julius Caesar was the one who was blamed for the tribute at the beginning. So we want to leave him right out of the genealogy, right? That would be awkward. And then the 3 biblical worthies are Joshua, Judas Maccabeus, and good, you got it. You got it, David Urbach. King David. King David, of course, is the other of the 3 biblical worthies. I don't know why he didn't. David was just saying he was surprised he didn't claim to be of the line of David. Me too. I'm thinking maybe he doesn't claim to be of the line of David because it's a little too messianic, right? He doesn't actually. He's not actually like, oh yeah, and by the way, Jesus is like my 3rd cousin. He doesn't go there. I suspect, David, that because the line of David is now like the messianic thing, it's why he doesn't claim descent from. That's my guess of why those 2, because they're the only 2 of the 6 ancient worthies that he doesn't claim kinship to. All the rest of the worthies are there. Judas Maccabeus cracks me up, right? I mean, Joshua is unlikely enough, but like Joshua and Judas Maccabeus, I mean, come on, that's really funny. Yeah. Now, the 3 Christian worthies, by the way, are Charlemagne. I always forget the other one. Of course, King Arthur is one of the 3. But then there's the 3rd one. Oh, darn it. I always forget the 3rd Christian worthy. I'm blanking on it. It's getting too late. I know it's just about time to stop anyway. Yes, Godfrey of Boulogne. Thank you, David. Phew. Godfrey of Boulogne. Yeah, or good. Sean got it there too. All right, Godfrey of Boulogne. Yeah, he's the other one. Anyway, so when he starts trotting out Alexander, Hector, Judas Maccabeus, and Joshua, it's really clear, right? He's like, I'm descended to like most of the 9 worthies, frankly, right? At least most of the 4 out of the 6 of the ones who came before this time, right? Okay, so all right. That establishes him, right, and his lineage. So he is a Saracen. He's not Christian, but he wants to be a Christian, and he comes from this mighty tradition, right? This mighty tradition, which is both biblical and classical, all of the great ones, all the way through. And he wants to become a Christian, and he's going to become a Knight of the Round Table. So you see, this guy, Sir Priamus, becomes it's not just that Arthur conquers all of these other realms. All of those realms that, remember in the first slide, were arrayed against him on the side of Rome. In the person of Sir Priamus, he's also they're also joining him, right? Those that are of good intention, right? Those that are of goodwill will come to Arthur, will repent. Right? He wants to repent. That's his goal. He's like, I need to repent, man. I need to become a Christian, and I need to repent, and then I can become a Knight of the Round Table, right? And that's the next step. That's the next generation, right? But there's meanwhile Sir Priamus and Sir Gawain are already mortally wounded, pretty much, right? Which kind of might put a damper on their relationship. Van Sir Priamus and Sir Gawain alicht both, and let your horses bite in the fire meadow. Then they let bride off his bascinettes, they take their helmets off, and her broad shields. Then either bled so much that every man had wonder that they might sit in their saddles or stand upon earth. No fetch me, said Sir Priamus, my vial that hangs by the girdle of my henchman, that means. For it is the floor of the 4 good waters that passes from paradise, that mickle fruit infallis that at ondae feed shall us all. Put that water in our flesh where the side is tamid, and we shall be whole within 4 hours. Okay, so this is handy. So in this flask, this vial that he has hanging from the belt of his henchman over there, it's the water of it's water from the 4 rivers that pass paradise. Genesis chapter 2. Remember Genesis chapter 2? It talks about the 4 rivers at Eden, right? There are 4 rivers that pass near the garden. So we're talking. So paradise, by the way, is not heaven. Paradise is almost never heaven. Paradise is Eden. Okay, the earthly paradise that has been lost. Right, that's paradise lost. It's talking about Eden. So there are 4 waters that pass by Eden, as you can read in Genesis chapter 2, and that mickle fruit, that great fruit, falls in the water. What fruit? What fruit falls in the water? You got 2 guesses. 4 fruit. What 2 guesses. What fruit falls into the water? Yeah, exactly, Mike. The fruit of the tree of life. Not the other fruit. The fruit of the tree of life, not the fruit of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but the fruit of the tree of life falls into the water. So this healing brew that he has is taken from the waters that have passed through paradise and have kind of soaked up some of the fruits from the tree of life that have fallen into the waters, right? One day that fruit shall feed us all, because the tree of life will grow, of course, in the New Jerusalem, which you can read in Revelation, chapter 21. So one day the fruit of the tree of life is going to feed us all. But right now we can't eat it, but it does fall into the water of the rivers that pass through Eden. We can't get there, but we can go downstream, from Eden, if you're there, and then you can get some of this water, which will have some of the essence of fruit of tree of life, and it's a healing potion, and it's pretty awesome. You know who has read this passage really well? Don Quixote has read this passage. If you know Don Quixote, you remember Don Quixote talking about how he just needs to make that balm, right? He's totally thinking of this passage when he's talking about his balm. Anyway, last one, then we're done. They're leaving, right? All the knights come to him and they're like, we haven't seen our wives in a really long time, so can we go home, see our wives? Because we missed them. And Arthur's like, okay, let's go home. Thon there was trussing of harness with carriage full noble, and the king took his leave of the holy father the pope, and patriarches and cardinales and senatores full riche, and left good governance in that noble city, and all the countries of Rome, for to ward and to keep on pine of death, and that in no wise his commandment be broken. Thus he passeth through the countries of all parties. And so King Arthur passed over the sea unto Sandwich Haven. When Queen Guinevere heard of his coming, she met with him at London, and so did all the other queens and noble laddies. For there was never a solemner meeting, sorry, a Freudian slip there, in on city togethers, for all manner of riches they brought with him at the full. Okay, there we go. Torah Stroke says, obey all my orders and also don't leave any hint to historians that I was ever here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay. The thing that's really noteworthy about this passage, the thing that I wanted to emphasize here, is if you are a fan of the alliterative Morte Arthur and have been enjoying Malory's adaptation into prose of the alliterative Morte Arthur, as well as slight updating with certain modern touches, like the prowess of Sir Lancelot, if you've been enjoying it, you'll be surprised at what happens next. That is to say, nothing. right? When he gets there, and there's Queen Guinevere waving on the quay, right? Hi, honey, welcome home. In the alliterative Morte Arthur, as in the Fall of Arthur, Arthur returns from his Roman campaign because he hears that Mordred has taken over the country. And most interestingly, in the alliterative, the 14th century alliterative Morte Arthur that Malory is using as his source, it is the only version of the story. Okay, well, no, this is not quite true. We'll get to that in a second. It is one of the few versions of the story in which Guinevere consensually elopes with Mordred. She is unfaithful to Arthur and cheats on him with Mordred and helps Mordred to usurp the kingdom. And this is the thing that is absolutely unique about the alliterative Morte Arthur. I don't know of any other instance in any other Arthurian story anywhere in the Middle Ages. Guinevere bears Mordred children, and they run off. Guinevere takes the kids and flees from England when Arthur returns and has his big climactic battle with Mordred, in which they're both killed. It is the only instance that I know of where Guinevere ever bears a child. Guinevere does not have babies anywhere, except for the alliterative Morte Arthur. And it's to Mordred, not to Arthur, that she bears children, which is just a fascinating moment in that poem. So this is the kind of, it's a happy ending, but it's a wildly anticlimactic ending. And what's more, it's an anticlimactic ending, which also, in a sense, defeats the entire purpose of the story he's adapting. Again, the alliterative Morte Arthur is a Wheel of Fortune story. I'm doing this thing. You guys who've done the Boethius class will know the Wheel of Fortune. Fortune's wheel is like a Ferris wheel, and you ride up the one side of the Wheel of Fortune. But there are no seatbelts, by the way, on the Wheel of Fortune, because when you rise to the top of Fortune's wheel, she's going to carry on turning her wheel, and you're going to come down the other side, and generally you fall off and are smashed to bits at the bottom. It's a class. The alliterative Morte Arthur is a classic Wheel of Fortune story, where it talks about Arthur, who is, he has achieved the greatest pinnacle of success. He is like, Arthur, you are the Roman emperor now. What are you going to do next? Answer is, go home and crash and fall to your death. That's what you're going to do next, because that's what happens, right? In the Middle Ages, you don't go to Disney World. You go to your horrible destruction and the loss of everything that you have gained. That's what you do when you achieve your great pinnacle of success. So in the original poem, of course, the war with the Romans and the defeat of the Emperor Lucius is only the setting up of the Morte of Arthur, right? Of the death of Arthur, which is the title of the poem. And only it's there to kind of make it more fitting and to set it up. By doing what he's done, by taking this poem, by taking half of this poem and adapting it and squeezing it into his larger story here, he's totally defeating the purpose of that. He's going to come back to the Wheel of Fortune. Arthur will eventually come down the other side. But again, it's just awkward as anything, right? Because it's like, hey, you've reached the pinnacle of human success, and now just go home and kind of retire for a while. And it's extremely anticlimactic. Stroke says it's more like the long ellipse of fortune. Yeah, kind of. Well, though, I mean, the point with Malory, though, you might think that defeating the Roman emperor and becoming the ruler of Rome is the top of the heap, right? It certainly is. That's the case in the poem, not in Malory's world, right? In Malory's world, Arthur is not going to be at the top of the Wheel of Fortune until all 150 seats are filled in the round table, right? The day that the last guy shows up and sits in the Siege Perilous and the entire table is complete for the first and only time, that's the day when Arthur is at the pinnacle of the Wheel of Fortune, and it's after that that things are going to start to go downhill. Anyway, so here we are at the happy but quite disappointing petering out of this story, again, especially if you're a fan of the original. As I said, I'm not a huge fan of Malory's adaptation here. If done in a freestanding way, I might like it, but as a piece of the larger story that he's kind of putting together here, it has some serious problems that kind of bother me every time. So join us next week when I will stop complaining about Malory's storytelling, and we will look at the tale of Sir Lancelot. The real beginning of Lancelot's career, having established himself so that like nobody could stand him a buffet in battle. He's now got a reputation for his strength and his prowess of arms. Now let's see what he's like. Let's get to know this character of Sir Lancelot. I'm a big fan of the tale of Sir. Although the Emperor Lucius bit is my least favorite part of Malory's book. The tale of Sir Lancelot is one of my favorite parts. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm going to try to do. It's relatively short, so I'm going to try to do it all next week, and we'll see how much we can get through. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Also, don't forget about the campaign stuff. Saturday, 3 p.m. is our campaign launching event, our Hobbit Day reading event. And then next week, I'll have some more information on our fundraising campaign and special things we're going to be doing here during our Mythgard Academy class. So thanks for joining us, everybody, and I will see you guys next week. Bye now. The Mythgard Academy has been offering in-depth discussions of awesome books and films since 2013, completely free to attend and free to download. If you've enjoyed our discussions and would like to help them continue, please consider donating at signumuniversity.org/fund.